Well, and Dr. Saunders and I usually match on every single webinar, but we aren't today. So that's kind of
Yeah.
disappointing.
He didn't call me.
I know. I've been wearing all my Barton shirts lately. I like them. Okay, let me see here. We're getting YouTube
Trying to
going.
protect people's eyes from the glare off my head.
That's funny. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar. We're excited to have you here. We have the whole crew in the house today, so that's fun. We are going to be talking about neuropathy today, and this has come up quite a bit, and so I'm excited to ask Dr. Saunders all the questions, and you can do the same. So if you wouldn't mind posting your questions in the Q&A, if you're on Zoom, that's just the best place for us to manage those. And then if you're watching on YouTube, you can go ahead and comment. Let us know that you're here. I think we're going to get started. First of all, just a reminder that Dr. Saunders is a wonderful medical doctor, but he is not your doctor. And so I legally have to tell you that you need to consult with your medical provider before you implement any of the things that we discuss here today. So if you're joining us for the first time, would you say hello in the chat? We would love to hear from you. And then, yeah, maybe let us know where you're from. Also, we have Ruth here. Ruth is from Dallas. Actually, the other thing that I'm going to quick post in here is I'm going to post our site. So it's bartonwebinar.com. Someone's going to ask for it. So I'm going to just post it right now. And anything that you see there, it'll link you to some products, etc. You can use code webinar25. That's one word, and that will save you 25% on anything you see. There we go. Post it in the chat, and I will do the same thing on YouTube. All right, let's do this. Let's dig into neuropathy. You guys can start posting your questions there in the Q&A, maybe the things that you want to know. And actually, I'm going to start this kind of in a weird way today. I just decided. I want to talk about Nervala first, if you don't mind, Dr. Saunders, because we talk about it a lot. I know a lot of people have experienced great benefits from Nervala. Oh, there you go. Joe's holding it up. And Joe, would you mind reading the ingredients in the back of that? I know two.
Sure. Alpha lipoic acid. What is that? 600 milligrams. I need to take more eagle eye vision. Apparently, getting my eyes are. And then so alpha lipoic acid and thiamine,
Right.
which is vitamin B1.
Okay.
We
Why?
can't hear you very well, Joe.
Oh, thanks for letting me know. I will check out my microphone. How about now? Is that any better?
No.
Well, can you hear me, Dr. Saunders?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Okay, Joe, I can hear you, so I don't know what's going on.
Ah,
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but why are those ingredients important when we're talking about neuropathy?
Yeah. The question then is like, what happens with neuropathy? Why is neuropathy there? And people get neuropathy because the nerves aren't working. And you know that's kind of redundant to say that. Neuropathy literally means there's something wrong with the nerves. But then why are they not working? What's going on? Well, the nervous system is very sensitive to the amount of energy available to them. And nerves don't store energy. Your muscles store energy. Your liver stores energy, but nerves don't store energy. So they need a source, a constant outside source of energy. When you have insulin resistance, then you don't have the ability to get glucose into the cells because they're resistant, and you don't have um, uh, the um, glucose transport proteins that are necessary to get the glucose into cells. So things like the nervous system, the kidneys, the heart, the brain, the eyeballs, these are all so sensitive to energy because they don't have a storage source. They don't have an internal source like your muscles and liver do. So when there's not enough energy around, then they starve. How could there not be enough energy around? Well, certain things are really important. And one is that you get 60% of your ATP, that's the energy that your cells use, comes from fat, and 40%, so 60% from fat, 40% from glucose. And that's about the ratio that is optimal for running your body. When you have insulin resistance, the insulin blocks you from using fat for energy. So gradually your ability to use fat declines. And when you have less fat, you have less ATP. But there's one other thing going on there, and that is when you're not using fat for energy, you make less ketone bodies. Ketone bodies are a source of energy for the nervous system. And ketone bodies are a very important source because they don't require insulin to get across the membrane. They go right through, right into the cell and provide a source of energy for the cell. This was illustrated 10 or 15 years ago. There was a doctor that her husband had Alzheimer's or dementia, and it was a glucose dementia. The brain wasn't getting enough glucose because the sugar can't get into the cells. It needs to transport proteins, and the transport proteins were low. And because of the insulin resistance, he's not using fat for energy. And when you use fat for energy, you make ketones. And he wasn't making ketones. So she started putting coconut oil in his breakfast, whatever it was, like giving him tablespoons of coconut oil. And he perked up really quickly. And everybody's like, wow, that's amazing. How does that happen? And so they started looking at these processes that are going on. And one of them is that if you have ketones, then they can go through a membrane and they don't need glucose transport proteins, or they don't need to be transported in. So if you have high levels of ketones, then you've got energy. You can provide energy for those nerves. So for all of these reasons, the nervous system just stops working. So why does it happen in the feet? Well, because the cell for that nerve is in the spinal cord in your back, in the lumbar spine. And it goes all the way down your leg, all the way down to your toe. And that's a very long way to go. And it needs energy to make that impulse go all the way from your toe all the way up. And if there's a lack of energy in the cell, then it's going to have less chance of getting there, right? So usually what happens is the nerves are not dead. They're going to sleep. They're just not working. They're not dead. They're just not working. And if you wait too long, they can be dead. But when you first start getting the burning, the numbness, the tingling, that all just is usually that there's some signals getting through, but not all of them. And then numbness, like none of the signals are getting through just because it can't make enough energy to get it all the way through. So what does that benfotiamine do? Benfotiamine is vitamin B1. It's actually really simple. But see, here's the key. It's a source of vitamin B1 that is not water soluble. So the water soluble has to be transported into the cells, and there's not enough energy for all of that to happen properly. The vitamin B1 that is fat soluble, called benfotiamine, does not require transport into the cells. It goes straight in, and it repairs both the arteries to provide more energy to the cell and the energy sources for the nervous system, so that they can function better as well. So that's the benfotiamine. Alpha lipoic acid is completely different. When you're using glucose for energy and you can't use fat for energy, you make a lot of oxygen-free radicals that need to be quelled. You need to get rid of them to put the fire out, so to speak. And that's what the alpha lipoic acid does. It puts the fire out, gets the inflammation down. And it helps when there's less inflammation in the arteries, then the arteries have better blood flow. So they both have two separate functions, in a sense. It's all the same thing, but two separate functions. One is to help the microvasculature get blood flow. And then number two, to help the energy systems for the nervous system to be able to transmit those impulses all the way from your toe all the way up to your spinal cord where that cell is, and then it can go from there.
Very
That was
interesting.
that was the long answer to a short question.
I love it though. It's so good. It just also made me think, Joe, do you still take Nervala at night to help with sleep?
Yeah, I do quite a bit. Not
What
like
is
every
the,
day, but a couple times a week.
what is the reason do you think, Dr. Saunders, that that helps Joe?
To sleep?
Yeah.
Oh, because it provides energy for the nervous system. You know, that when things are not working well, then there's a lot of stimulating things that happen. So, for example, if your heart isn't working very well, then you make a bunch of adrenaline from to overcome the stress, so to speak. If your nerves aren't stressed, then you're not putting out adrenaline and PEA and all of the stimulating neurotransmitters, and it'll allow you to sleep.
I think for
Very
me, my
interesting.
feet would start feeling like they're hot and overheating a little bit. So I think the Nervala cools off the nerves. Like, yeah, just helps me
Yeah,
be more.
that's what it
sense.
does.
I also am reminded, I sometimes we get people who hop on the webinar and they'll say, I don't think this Nervala is working. I'm starting to feel all these things in my feet. What is happening there?
Oh, yeah. Well, if your nerves aren't working and your feet are numb, and then you start taking Nervala and they start waking up, then as they're waking up, you're gonna feel burning, tingling, and more pain, and you're gonna go, "Oh no, this is horrible. I'm taking this Nervala and it's making it worse." No, actually, it's waking things up, and it just may take a while. Just kind of like, if you've ever slept on your arm and you wake up in the morning and your hand is completely numb and doesn't work, and it's like and then as it starts to wake up, you get tingling and pain, and it's like and eventually it wakes up and everything comes back to normal. That's kind of the way the Nervala works. Same issue.
So I'm actually going to take you guys to bartonnutrition.com. Is that what's showing up for you, Dr. Saunders? Is that what you're seeing?
Yep.
Okay. So if you go to bartonnutrition.com, you can scroll through here and see Nervala. I know a couple of you are asking questions about the ingredients again, and so I'm just going to show that here. So you can see benfotiamine and then alpha lipoic acid. Now, don't forget, if you go to bartonnutrition.com, use code webinar25, one word, you'll save 25% on anything that you find here. And I think it's really important that we not only talk about this, but let's say these nerves are starting to wake up and we're thinking, okay, I would really like to get my blood sugar in check. Would the diabetes solution kit also be something very beneficial to someone who's dealing with neuropathy?
Okay, so if you look at the issue and if you don't fix the underlying problem, you can't assume that the pill is going to fix it for you. That's not really what it's for, and that's not how it works. Yeah, people write in and they say, "Oh, my neuropathy went away. My feeling is back in my feet." And now I don't need to fix my diabetes because everything's working. No, that's not the point. Why did that happen in the first place? Well, I explained why. Because you don't have good glucose transport into your nerves. Your nerves can't store energy. And so, okay, you improve the blood flow, you improve the energy system so you can function better, but that's temporary unless you get rid of the insulin resistance. So you still need to get rid of the insulin resistance. That is imperative. If you have neuropathy, then you have insulin resistance. You got to fix that.
All right. I'm going to dig into some of these questions. So again, if you can post those in the Q&A, that will be make it a little easier for me.
Testing my mic
Joyce,
real quick. Test. Is this different?
Yeah, it
Better?
is.
Okay,
Sounds
I
good. Yeah.
switched. All right, thanks.
all right. Joyce says, recently began the diabetes solution kit. and now I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. I'm 72. Do you have any advice or anything I need to know, or continue with the solution kit as is?
Huh. Well, for breast cancer, okay. So think of it this way. Um, the old way of treating breast cancer, and most oncologists are about 20 to 30 years behind the current research. So research is going way far beyond what anybody is doing at this point, because they learned back 20 years ago, and they're still doing what they've always done. And that's kind of normal. That's the way we all do things, right? Well, I've always done it this way. I'm going to continue doing it that way. And it's usually a generation or two before new things come out. So there are a couple of books that can be very helpful. One is called How to Starve Cancer, and it's a how-to book, and it's a good starting point. And there's a website you can join as well. And that's more cutting edge kind of stuff that would help with that. Because in the process of starving cancer, you're going to fix your diabetes. And so I think if you deal with that primarily, that you're going to do like a ketogenic diet, right? So what's a ketogenic diet? It's phase one of the program. So buy the book, do phase one, and then go to the book or the website, How to Starve Cancer. I'm trying to remember the author's name, and I'm blanking on her name. She had cancer, and she goes through her process of how she resolved the cancer, and then she's done a lot of research outside of that. And you can't count on your oncologist because they're still working from the 1990s. They don't have any information from the 2000s yet. Oh, Jane McClellan, that's her. Yeah.
Mhm. There you go. Okay. All right. Okay. Anonymous says, when eating out, it never occurred to me as to how much omega-6 oils I was ingesting, as long as I ordered the meats grilled, braised, or blackened and avoided fried foods. Does eating dry roast beef without gravy minimize the ingestion of omega-6 oils? That's question one.
Well, it depends. It depends on what oils they use. And
Yeah.
so if you look at how much omega-6 is in oils, almost every oil has some omega-6. So the issue is a little less of avoiding omega-6, although if you do avoid the big ones like soy and corn and cottonseed oil, if you avoid those, that's a great idea. But otherwise, getting more fish and flax seeds, chia seeds, flax seeds, and fish, then that helps you balance that omega-6 to omega-3 ratio.
Okay. There were some other questions here. It says, I do not eat salads for hygienic reasons, and some places do not serve hard-boiled eggs. Are there any instances when too much protein could interfere with the metabolizing of sugar?
Oh, actually, yes. Some people have an issue with that. I've had patients that we've had to put on relatively low protein diet, and the way we usually do it is we have them eat like a 30-gram, 40-gram, one meal a day, a protein meal early in the morning, or in the morning, because that's when the liver processes protein. And then have them in the next meal, they can do fat and fiber, but not eat a lot of protein. And the reason for that is because, yeah, too much protein can be made into sugar, and some people just will do that instead of burning fat. So it's not always, and not everybody doesn't do that, but some people do.
Beverly, welcome back. Beverly says, thanks, Dr. Saunders. I think you've just explained why phase one seemed to have erased my memorable but slight neuropathy symptoms in my feet.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Ruth says, does type 2 cause neuropathy? If your blood sugar or A1C begins to drop from nutrition or overall health and exercise, will you see less neuropathy?
Okay, good question, because it's not the blood sugar. Remember, we talked about the problem is that the sugar can't get into the cells, that they can't make energy. So that's where the problem lies. The problem is insulin resistance. So you can have neuropathy, you can have kidney disease, you can be going blind, and even have Alzheimer's disease before you even have any high blood sugar. You don't have to have high blood sugar. All you need is insulin resistance. So the key is to become insulin sensitive.
All right. Next question. Let's see, from I think it's Maddie. I have type 2 diabetes. I was wondering how you can use berberine with turmeric and cinnamon chromium to decrease my 2 metformin tablets at night, with changing 1 milligram of Ozempic before I move up to 2 milligrams of Ozempic on January 1st.
Okay. So I can't recommend Ozempic. It's not a long-term solution for anyone. It really does more harm than good in the long run. And it makes you insulin resistant. So that's an issue. As far as your first question, some people just replace their berberine or replace their metformin for berberine. So they'll just take 1 berberine twice a day, and then that would be fine. And then just take the synochroma as prescribed. And turmeric, if you have inflammation, you don't have to take turmeric.
All right. Okay, so let's see. Cheryl says I started eating 20 carbs per day and got into ketosis, and I'm bringing my blood sugar down. The top of my feet and shins turned ice cold for a few days. Why did they do that? And should I be concerned? Do you live in South Dakota? No, I'm just kidding.
uh, so no, you don't. You shouldn't. You shouldn't be concerned. Ice cold, like to touch, or the feeling of ice cold. In other words, if you touch it with your hand, does it feel ice cold? Because that's a constriction of blood vessels, and that's a different thing entirely. The sensation of I touch it and it feels warm, but inside it feels ice cold, as if there were ice on it. And then that's the sensation part, and that's the neuropathy, and that's probably the waking up of the nervous system. Either way, it's not, if it happens for a few days, that's perfectly fine. It's not a problem.
Let's see. Anonymous said, so what can I do to assist in neuropathy?
Well, exercise. Get your insulin resistance down. So improve insulin sensitivity. And then you can add Nervala to that. Those are the 3 things I would do.
Okay, let me see here. Oh, Bill is here. How are you, Bill? Bill Brown is here from Australia. I know it's like 4 a.m. for you or something like that. So we're glad to have you back. Hope you are in good health.
And you're not doing the 610 reset.
Yeah. If you're in trouble, if you're doing the 610 right now, Bill, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's see here. Katherine says, does neuropathy come and go? It seems like I have it in my hands, specifically my thumb and 2 fingers next to my thumb. Both of my hands are affected.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yes. Okay. So that's a great question too. The nervous system, like I said, is extremely sensitive to a lack of energy. So any fluctuations in energy, well, guess what's happening in your body? Energy systems are continuously fluctuating. So if you have anything that's borderline functional, that's like it's working now, but it's right on the border, and anything can set it off and would stop it from working. For whatever reason. So for some people, it's a lack of blood flow, where you have a borderline blood flow. So for example, you mentioned the arm. In the arm, there's only 1 artery going into your arm, and that has to go over the rib And sometimes it pinches off a little bit. So you have mostly adequate blood flow, but not quite adequate. And then what happens if your ketone bodies drop or something like that? Then all of a sudden you have neuropathy in the hand. It's like, it's not functioning, it's not working. And it's so it could be blood flow, it could be lack of energy, or the energy system's going up, blood sugar going up, the ability to take in the blood sugars increasing and decreasing. And then your autonomic nervous system is constricting blood vessels sometimes. And so that can affect it too. So for all those reasons, yes, it does fluctuate a lot.
All right. I just want to see if I miss anything else here. Okay, Don said, I noticed that when my sugar is high, my feet hurt. I eat the right foods and I take my insulin and I take cinachroma and berberine, but my sugar still spikes. I will drink a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar mixed with water. I noticed that my sugar will go down, but does drinking this vinegar destroy what the cinachroma and berberine do? What will it take to control my spikes?
No. Okay. What it takes to control the spikes is not eating any sugar. Some people, like we've had people actually comment on our program and say, I've had to go down to 0 carbs. I've had to do fasting to get the ketone levels up, because a lot of people, they measure their ketones to see where they are. And sometimes it requires a fast, sometimes it requires a carnivore diet. We've had people do both of those. We've had people just cut out carbs altogether. And in doing that, then the body starts burning fat for energies. And you have to provide enough fat, of course. And if you have a lot on your body, if you're overweight, then you can. That's a great way to do it. I've been doing, you know what? I got to tell you, I didn't tell you guys. I've been doing this keto diet. What are we on? 2 months now. And so after 60 days, I measured my body fat analysis, and I've dropped my belly fat has dropped down. My total percent body fat is down to 13%. I'm usually hanging around the 20s. I've been as low as 15 in the past. And my muscle mass went up because I'm exercising. So, you guys, this stuff works. This is actually, it's really good. It's a useful way of improving your both your metabolic function and your general health.
And how are you feeling? How's your energy, Dr. Saunders?
Oh, my energy is great. I have plenty of energy.
Awesome.
It works really, but I gotta tell you, I am hungry all the time, but not for just anything. Right after I eat this morning, I had 3 eggs and an avocado and salsa and cheese on top, and that was a really good breakfast, right? And after I was done, I'm like, gosh, I gotta have some bread or some cereal, or that. I'm looking around for carbs. And so after 2 months of being essentially carb free, I still crave it. I know, you guys, I know, it's hard.
And I will remind you, Dr. Saunders also was the kid that used to pick up chewed gum and eat it. So he likes his sugar, but he can do it. So if he can do it, anybody can do it.
How much of that carb loving, like after 2 months, is like, like habits or psychological versus like your body actually craving it, or what do you think?
Okay, so I read a book on this, and I think it's a real thing because it's a lifetime issue with me. And so there's a book called Dirty Genes by Dr. Ben Lynch. He also has a website, and this book goes into an explanation of your genes, your genetic issues, and I read through as I was reading the book. He has, a laundry list of check boxes that you can look at. If you have these symptoms, then you have a monoamine oxidase, MAOA deficiency, and all that other stuff. And so so as I was checking boxes, it was like 100% of the deficiency or excess monoamine oxidase. Yeah, that's the one, dirty genes. So 100% on the checklist, and one of them was carb craving, and so I just have a genetic problem. That's what it is. And boy, it's hard because the cravings are there. I don't know that everybody has the same cravings, but I get people who like say, gosh, I haven't smoked in 10 years and I still want a cigarette. Or, I haven't had heroin for 5 years and I still wish I could shoot up at this point. I feel that, I guess.
That's
Hmm.
yeah.
Do you
That's
think
good.
at some point you'll like increase your carbs a little bit, or do you plan to kind of keep the really low keto for a while?
So I've decided I'm thinking about it still, but at this point, I think what I'm going to do is to avoid the sweets. So I would eat things like brown rice and beans, things that I don't currently eat because I'm actually doing ketogenic. But I would avoid sweet things like watermelon, and apples and oranges and bananas, the really high carb, rapid, uh, 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 the sweet tasting stuff that releases all that dopamine. Because that's what I'm missing is dopamine.
Yeah.
And if you look at, I think it was Jordan Peterson, uh, gave this series of lectures on dopamine. It was fascinating how even lobsters, you can measure the levels of dopamine in lobsters and tell where they are in the pecking order. Do they peck? I don't know. Anyway, of where they are in the lobster pecking order, because the dopamine is the big thing, and every time you win, you get dopamine. And people who use, smoke dope, that's what it is. They're getting dopamine. People who, use drugs, people who smoke, people who take or eat sugar, sex, all of those ways of getting dopamine, winning, getting a lot of money, winning the lottery, all that. Those are dopamine rushes, and that's what people are looking for. And so life. Jordan Peterson went into, life is all about your next dopamine rush. Where are you going to get it from, kind of thing. And so I'm starving for dopamine. I'm always looking around. I need something, and I pretty much know what it is, but it never goes away. That's the key. Like, it's always there. I can get distracted. It's still there if I think about it.
Mm.
Sounds like a spiritual battle in some ways.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of does,
Yeah.
huh?
Like walk in the
That,
spirit and not in the flesh, Galatians 5, Paul talks
yeah,
about that battle.
that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you too, like, I think the slow carbs, some people call them slow carbs because it takes you longer to digest instead of like shooting straight into your bloodstream. But, and we were talking about CGMs a little bit, continuous glucose monitors, and how like eating vegetables or fiber first and then maybe having some carbs at the end of your meal is way better than eating the carb first in the meal even, and choosing what you're putting in your body first to slow things down and not see the big spikes. But you agree with that?
Yeah, I've seen the research on that, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. People who change the way they eat to getting the carbs, the rapidly absorbed carbs last, so that you have things like fiber. You eat your fiber first, and then you have fat, and then you have protein, and then you put your rapidly absorbed carbs at the end, like a dessert. Um, that's it's a thing, and it does slow down the spikes, so you don't get the glucose spikes at least. So it works. I haven't tried it myself, but yeah.
Speaking of those continuous glucose monitors, if you post in the chat if you use one of those, I'm just curious. I did see that they now just made one of them available to everyone, and I cannot think. I got an email about it because I was on their list for when they were going to release it to the public. But let us know in the chat if you're using one.
And
I
what
think it's a
brand?
smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Have you used one, Joe?
Not yet. I want to do it. So I think,
Me
yeah,
too.
you needed a prescription. So, but I know there's companies out there that, they have their doctors online. Like you just fill out a form, like, yep, you need it. Okay, here you go.
Okay.
Whether you need it or not.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
There is a note here from Beverly. She'll tell you how to make your roast beef. Beverly, you're full of all sorts of awesome information. You are so fun. So you guys can look in the Q&A. You can initially sear it at 550 degrees and then follow Beverly's instructions. Okay. Abel says, can you walk us through a high-level summary of how to reduce insulin resistance?
Oh, great. Okay. We have several webinars about this. But yeah, let's make it like just walk you through step by step how this works. So the first thing you need to know is why there's insulin resistance in the first place. Because if you know why, then you know what to do. So insulin resistance means there's fewer insulin receptors available to use insulin to get glucose to get into a cell. So when the cells fill up with, it's called glycogen, glucose. When they fill up with glucose, when they're up to their eyeballs in glucose, they stop making insulin receptors. So there's fewer receptors around, and that's insulin resistance. It's just that there's not as many receptors. So your pancreas makes insulin, but there's no receptors around, and the blood glucose doesn't drop down, so your pancreas makes more insulin and more insulin. I've had people, normal is around 5 on a fasting specimen. I've had people over 160 of insulin, and usually way high is 30. But the pancreas can just keep going and going and making more insulin as the blood sugar goes up, because the blood sugar can't get into the cells because the cells are already up to their eyeballs in sugar, glucose. So that's what's going on. So if you understand that, then you go, oh, I know what to do about that. Number one, don't eat glucose. What's phase 1 of the program? It's a low glucose diet. It's so low, 20 grams. I eat less than 20 grams, I don't, I've done like days where I look up like melon. Melon is not bad. If a cup of melon only has about 15 grams of carbs in it. So if I eat one piece, then I get 4 grams, and that's okay. I've done that because I crave it. That's why. So, so if you stop eating glucose, then your cells will start using up all that glucose. It'll start going down and down and down and down. So then the other thing to do is use it. So how do you use up glucose? Darn, the best way is exercise. So get out there and exercise. But here's the funny thing is it takes a lot of exercise. You can't just do it in 5 minutes a day or something like that. Think about it. If you run a 5K, 5 kilometers, is 3 miles. Let's just say you run 3 miles. How many calories do you burn? Well, if your average weight, 160 pounds, 130 pounds, whatever, you're going to burn about 400 calories. You know how fast you can eat 400 calories? Like, it's easy to eat 400 calories. And it takes like a lot of exercise. So the idea is not that you're going to exercise to use up all those calories and you can eat whatever you want. That's not the way it works. So in doing the ketogenic diet and doing phase 1 of the program, then you start exercising, and the muscle cells don't require insulin while you're exercising. They don't need insulin to bring glucose in. They don't need it. So then you will start becoming more insulin sensitive because you exercise. So those two things go together very well. One thing that works partly for this is if you eat and then go for a walk, as your blood glucose goes up, remember, your muscle cells don't require, if you're exercising, your muscle cells don't require. So I'm not saying go out, eat and then go out and swim and get a cramp and drown. That's what everybody tells you is going to happen. By the way, that never happens, but that's beside the point. Just go out for a walk, leisurely stroll. And that will keep you from getting a spike after a meal too. And that will also prevent you from getting more insulin resistance. So it helps with insulin sensitivity to do a mild exercise after a meal.
All right. Noel says, I'm taking prednisone due to my heart transplant, and I take it in the morning, only now 7.5 milligrams. It raises my sugar levels throughout the day, usually leveling off around 5 or 6 at night. I'm currently weaning off of prednisone as I progress through the transplant regimen. I'm taking Synochroma, Nervala, turmeric BP, Healthy Gut Restore, and berberine. Any suggestions?
Yes. Okay. Prednisone, we've done webinars on this about the stress cause of diabetes. And part of that webinar, we talked about prednisone or cortisone when people are on therapy for, whatever other reason, a heart transplant in this case, or people have asthma, severe allergies, whatever, they're on the long-term corticosteroid therapy. They're much more likely to get insulin resistant. So the way to handle that is to do a ketogenic diet. So when you have high cortisol, the ketogenic diet allows you to burn fat for energy. Yes, it makes you insulin resistant, but if you're burning fat, then you don't need insulin because fat does not require insulin to get into the cells, and it requires something else called carnitine. Yeah, so take extra carnitine. Hardly anybody's deficient in carnitine, but for some people, like with congestive heart failure, that could be an issue. That's why it's in the Healthy Heart supplement. So take L-carnitine, get on a ketogenic diet. So do the phase 1 of the program, and that will get your insulin sensitivity up so that the prednisone will have much less effect and you won't have the problems coming off of the prednisone.
Okay. Julia said, if someone has been on a low-fat diet for decades and has neuropathy, will increasing fat in the diet help?
In the diet, maybe, but you have to remember that just eating fat doesn't mean you're going to burn fat. If you're eating fat with carbs, then you might just continue to burn carbs and not fat, because people on a high carb, low fat diet, like very low fat diet, like the McDougall program or something that is super low, they primarily run on carbs. They don't run on fat very much. And so they have relatively higher insulin levels, but they aren't insulin resistant. So that they have that advantage of not being insulin resistance from fat, because fat can make you insulin resistant. But if you just add fat in, then you end up with gaining weight and still being insulin resistant, or being more insulin resistant because you're adding fat in. So, I've thought of this a lot, and this kind of runs into something that I've been researching, and I can't find any studies that were done. But I think a really cool idea, like if you're going into phase 2, we didn't put this in the book because there's really no research on it, but it's just an idea that I've had. If you eat, like one day you can have your ketogenic diet, a high fat and protein and meat and have vegetables and all that, just like a keto diet, right? On one day. And then on a different day, you could have rice and beans and corn and vegetables, but no fat, like a very low fat diet. So if you alternate those, not necessarily day to day, you could go a week or a month, just doing a keto diet, and then another month doing a high carb, very low fat diet. Why? Because fat makes you insulin resistant, and if you're eating sugar with fat, then you're going to get insulin resistance on top of insulin resistance because you're adding the carbs to the fat. Whereas if you're eating a keto diet, then you don't need insulin because you're not eating carbs. And then when you eat the carb diet, you don't get insulin resistant because you're not eating fat. So I think that, like, I wish we could do a study, type 2 diabetes. So after you do phase 1, you get down to normal, and then you do this like alternating carbs one day, fat another day or week or whatever. I think that would work. It seems like it should, because from the research I've done, the insulin resistance from eating fat lasts about 8 hours. So you could just do one day on one and one day on another, and it seems like that would work really well. Don't have any research, but so that's a very long answer to tell you that don't just start eating fat with your carbs. Like, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Interesting. All right. Okay, Annie said, I read that L-glutamine helps with sugar cravings. Any truth?
Ah, glutamine. Glutamine's an amino acid. It's abundant, and it is the primary energy source. It's made into glucose. It's the primary energy source for your enterocytes, the cells that line your intestines. And so the theory behind that is that you can get a whole bunch of glutamine, and then have that made into glucose, and then you wouldn't crave sugar, and it would fill up your intestines, and you wouldn't be craving energy. They wouldn't be lacking energy. I suppose it's possible. I don't know of any research on it, though, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But I can give you the theory behind it, and as to whether it actually works. I would say no, because I could eat a whole steak which has a ton of glutamine in it, and after I'm done, my stomach's full, and I'm sitting there looking around. Isn't there a baked potato supposed to be here or something with some carbs in it?
Speaking of that, okay, there was a message here from Beverly. 2 points. We often crave what we are allergic to. For example, alcohol for an alcoholic. And I noticed that too. I remember when I had done some testing to see how I could tolerate wheat, and it came back saying that I had a moderate allergy to it. Or you can't say allergy, moderate something.
Reaction.
I craved it. It was one thing that I always craved. So that could be. And let's see, what else did she say? Test to figure out which is driving your craving. Okay. And sometimes when you crave something, you may need it as well. So maybe you need some carbs. Oh, Beverly said also, I follow Hank, the TID, is that the type 1 diabetic alert dog, who routinely informs his diabetic of low or high blood sugar 10 to 15 minutes before the continuous glucose monitor.
Wow. Wow. I think it'd be better. There was this joke when I was in the Air Force ROTC. This new plane was coming out called the F-18 that would fly itself. And it was so that you could put it on autopilot, it would literally fly itself. And then they had a pilot in there just in case something went wrong. And then they put a dog in there to bite the pilot if he took over the controls. So I wonder if we could do that with diabetes, like every time somebody went for a cookie or something, the dog would bite him, and that'd be your diabetic dog.
Yeah, that's true. That'd probably be good. I probably should get one of those. Good idea. Okay. This is interesting too. Rayanne said, I'm using a continuous glucose monitor, and I noticed that when I eat cucumbers, that spikes my blood sugar. Is that normal? Do cucumbers have that many carbs? Here, I thought I was doing a good diet choice, and cucumbers don't seem to be a good thing for me.
That is weird. Gosh, because I eat cucumbers, because I looked at like a serving, a reasonable size serving is about 4 grams of carbs. And so uh gosh, man, that spikes your blood sugar, huh? I have a whole cucumber in here for my lunch. No, I don't know. I wouldn't think so. Cucumbers are related to melons, and they don't have yeah, they do have some sugar in them, but it's not a lot. And so, gosh, maybe you're insulin resistant, or maybe it's what you're eating the cucumbers with. Like if you're dipping cucumbers into a sour cream dip or something, and all the fat is making you more insulin resistant, and then the sugar makes you spike or something like that. Like that woman that said she could eat bread but couldn't have nachos because the nachos have a lot of, they're fried in oil. So then there's a lot of oil with the carb and, making her insulin resistant. So I don't know. I don't know. Hey, that'd be a good thing if you have a continuous monitor. Try your cucumber separately without anything that has fat in it.
The other thing could be if you really don't love cucumbers and you're sad and you're stressed out every time you eat them, that could make your numbers go up too. I mean, that is a possibility. Also, remember, we've had our friend who was on the webinar here talking about how he had gone through phase 1 and phase 2, got to the point where he could have a little bit of juice and his blood sugar numbers didn't spike. But if he had sugar-free gum, his blood sugar would spike. So everyone is a little bit different. Very interesting. I'd be curious to see what we find out here. All right. Delbert says, does regular black coffee without sugar increase your glucose levels, and why?
Black coffee without sugar?
Yeah, right.
Or cream? So it's black.
Yeah.
It should not increase your blood glucose levels. There's been several studies on that. Black tea, black coffee, bitter tasting things like cucumbers, and tea, iced tea without sugar. Those studies have been done, and they don't tend to increase the blood sugar. I don't know why it would.
Gladys said, why do I get so tired right after eating?
Okay, so this could be an issue, and that is people with type 2 make extra insulins because the blood sugar spikes up and doesn't level off. It keeps going up. So then the insulin keeps going up, and then you have this really high insulin, and then the blood sugar levels off and just drops rapidly. And some people get really fatigued and tired after a meal because their blood sugar is actually getting hypoglycemic. They're low blood sugar.
Okay, Diane said, Dr. Saunders, did you say that turmeric interferes with berberine? I take turmeric for my arthritis because it helps. No pain.
No, I just said in trying to get off of metformin and take berberine and turmeric instead, I said, well, if you're trying to get off metformin, you could just exchange it for berberine, and then the turmeric you could take if you had other reasons, but it wasn't necessary for getting off of metformin.
All right. Okay, we're running out of time. Here we go. Sonia said I won't be on the webinar tomorrow, but I wanted to ask a question about aspirin. Can women take aspirin, or should they be taking aspirin? So tomorrow's the Healthy Heart webinar for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, okay, good question. Aspirin is commonly has been recommended. Of course, the Bayer aspirin people say, yeah, everybody should take aspirin. The research shows that there are risks and there are benefits. There are definitely benefits to taking aspirin, but there are also risks. And so if you look at the overall risk versus benefit ratio, it's more risk to take the aspirin than to not take the aspirin. So the benefits you get from the aspirin are not worth the risks that you take. So if people have no problems with bleeding, if they don't have ulcer issues or anything like that, and they tolerate aspirin well, then their risks would be low and their benefits would be relatively higher. So that could be changed on an individual basis. But the question, should women take it specifically? Again, you're in the same boat of weighing the risks versus the benefits. And if you have a tendency toward ulcers acid reflux or any of those kinds of issues, then aspirin would probably do more harm than good.
Okay, I think this will be our last question. Kevin says, I have neuropathy from stenosis and I have type 2. Is there anything I should do to avoid bigger problems down the road?
Absolutely. It's everything we've talked about today. Go on phase 1, get your insulin resistance down, get your body as insulin sensitive as possible. Exercise regularly so that you get good blood flow. Do breathing exercises to get your parasympathetic nervous system working properly, dilate your blood vessels properly. And take the Nervala and Synachroma for that matter, because that you want to improve your insulin sensitivity as much as possible, and even turmeric. And then don't forget stress reduction. That's important. Oh, and there's one more thing. Get fish oil. Fish oil prevents clots from forming. And atherosclerosis is clots. That's what it is. That's what strokes are. That's what heart attacks are. It's clots. So you want to prevent clots. And the way to prevent clots is to decrease inflammation, improve blood flow, and decrease your clotting factors. So getting omega-3 oils up.
All right. Okay. That's it for today, Dr. Saunders. God bless your patients. We'll see you tomorrow. And you guys can join us for the Healthy Heart webinar. That is tomorrow, 12 Central Time. Same format. And our friend Cheryl with the Barton team will be with us as well. We'd love to have you. You can register at bartonwebinar.com. Anything else, Joe?
I got a little side chat going here on that Stello glucose biosensor or whatever. So, yeah, just go to stello.com, STELO.com. I know nothing about them. I just did a Google search and it seemed reasonable. Didn't need a prescription. Looked like everything I wanted to try, and it was $89 a month. You get 2 sensors, lasts 15 days each. And I think there's an app that you download for free, I would imagine. Once you get it, I think it said 3 business days delivery. So I'll probably get it on Monday, and maybe I'll have some data to report next Wednesday.
Awesome.
So,
great. Okay.
All righty. I got to go record a video.
All right. Thank you, everyone. You have a wonderful day.